India marks its 76th Independence Day today. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lead the Independence Day celebrations from the ramparts of the historic Red Fort shortly from now. Prime Minister Modi will hoist the national flag at the Red Fort and address the nation for the 9th consecutive time. The unfurling of the tricolour will be then followed by the national anthem and a 21-gun salute from the troops. In view of the Independence Day celebration, security has been stepped up across the national capital with more than 10,000 personnel manning the Red Fort area. From facial recognition system cameras to multi-layered security covers, authorities have left no stone unturned to ensure protection. As this year marks 75 years of independence, the government has launched a host of events to add to the verve around the celebration. From monuments to iconic buildings, all have been lit up in the colours of saffron, white and green. This under Indian government's campaign Har Ghar Tiranga, which means tricolour in every house. Indian President Draupadi Murmu meanwhile addressed the nation on the eve of the country's Independence Day. In a maiden address, President Murmu lauded India's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and the government's policies in recent years. On the occasion of India's Independence Day, US President Joe Biden has sent his wishes to mark the day. In a statement, Biden said US joins the people of India to honor its democratic journey and that both the countries are indispensable partners when it comes to tackling global challenges. India marks its 76th Independence Day today. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lead the Independence Day celebrations today from the ramparts of the Red Fort shortly from now. Prime Minister Modi will hoist the national flag at the Red Fort, will address the nation for the 9th consecutive time this year. The unfurling of the tricolour will be followed by a national anthem and a 21-gun salute. In view of the Independence Day celebration, security has been stepped up across the national capital with more than 10,000 personnel manning the Red Fort area. From facial recognition system, cameras, multi-layered security covers, authorities have left no stone unturned to ensure protection and security at this time. Now, for more on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent Sidhant Sibal is joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us, Sidhant. India marks 75 years of independence. What can you tell us of the events planned for the day?
Well, we will see the celebrations due to start shortly. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort, and we know that the Har Ghar Tiranga initiative is underway, and as part of it, if you go around the capital here in the national capital Delhi, you'll see flags all around, and of course the focus in the speech is something that everyone will be keen to hear and watch, given the fact that every time the Prime Minister addresses from the ramparts of Red Fort, we have seen he initiating or perhaps talking about a new policy, whether it comes to the Startup India or whether it comes to foreign policy.
Absolutely, Sidhant. In fact, I was just going to come to that. Prime Minister Modi is set to address the nation from the Red Fort. What are some of the key areas that he is likely to talk about during the address?
Well, initial indication say that he will be focusing on health, and it is given that health is a top priority for the government, especially in the backdrop of the COVID crisis. But frankly speaking, nobody knows as to what Prime Minister is going to speak. But whatever he speaks today is going to be an important part of the policy in terms of the government policy.
Right, and the government also launched the Har Ghar Tiranga campaign, as you mentioned, as part of its Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the Har Ghar Tiranga initiative is something that can be seen on the ground, whether you are here in Delhi or whether you in any part of the country. In fact, if you travel around the city today, you will see many people selling flags and many people buying flag as well. This is something that has really been seen across the country. And if you talk about the celebrations, we know that India is, the Indian government has taken the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav initiative, and as part of it, number of initiatives have been announced lot of videos have been released, and of course the focus is that how the common man can be involved in the celebration today. In fact, at the Red Fort, what the Indian government has done, that it has invited Anganwadi workers, mortuary workers, sweepers to see, of course, the celebrations, participate in the celebrations, but also give the honor to them for playing an important role in the society.
Right. Also, Sidhant, you are on ground right now. What can you tell us of the mood on ground currently?
There was a little audio glitch, but if we can just talk about what's happening on Independence Day, we can, of course, expect a lot of messages from the international community as well. The US President Joe Biden has congratulated India. Remember, India and the US are celebrating 75 years of establishment of diplomatic relationship. We have seen the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also extending congratulations, and we will expect more world leaders to extend congratulations as part of diplomatic protocol. And given that this is an important occasion for India, we will see statements being issued. In fact, over the weekend we saw statements by countries like Seychelles talking about how India's independence had inspired their independence as well.
Right, Sidhant. Also, let's talk of the preparations a little bit ahead of the celebrations. Multi-layered security cover along with facial recognition system cameras, they've all been installed at the entry and exit points. What can you tell us about the security preparations and just preparations in general at the Red Fort? We also see Prime Minister Narendra Modi live visuals coming in right now. Yes, Sidhant, please continue.
Well, in terms of the preparations, I can tell you that, of course, there is security, heavy security presence on the ground. If you try to go towards the central part of Delhi, you will see a lot of security personnel doing their checking, but that is normal part of the security drills, given that security is usually heightened around Independence Day and Republic Day. But also, of course, today, of course, speeches, the speech of the Indian Prime Minister from the Red Fort is something that has a lot of focus on. So a lot of preparation has been done by the state broadcaster in terms of the telecast of that all-important speech.
Right, absolutely. Sidhant, do stay on with us. We're getting the visuals coming in right now from Rajghat. We can see Prime Minister Narendra Modi here. This as India celebrates 75 years of independence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will soon address the nation from the Red Fort. Currently he's at Rajghat. We can see the visuals coming in live right now. Right, Sidhant, we just got the live visuals right now from Rajghat. Prime Minister Narendra Modi there. Shortly, he will be addressing the nation from Red Fort. Now, what can you tell us of the events planned through the day? We, of course, will expect the unfurling of the flag and an address by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What can you tell us?
Well, of course, today the entire day begins with the speech of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And once the speech is over, you will see celebrations taking place across the country, and the various chief ministers and governors in various states and union territories will be unfurling the national flag. But nonetheless, today is an occasion to talk about what India has achieved in the last 75 years and what India plans to do in next 25 years, which the Indian government has termed as Amrit Kal, and next 75 years as well. So a lot of reflection on that, but also focus on what India can do for the global community, because by next few years, India will be the most populous country, and what India says is going to impact the global policy decisions as well. Remember, over the weekend, we saw comments by the Indian External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, who talked about how the UNSC reforms are incomplete if it doesn't include India. And that has been a number one priority of the Indian government in terms of foreign policy. So that is essentially one of the key focus area in the long-term way of the Indian government. But today we will also see a lot of celebrations, whether it's by the forces, by the Indian missions, and given that the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is being celebrated, so you will see a lot of visuals coming from across the world, especially of the Indian missions who are decked up in Indian flags, and they are decked up in the Indian tricolor. We have already seen visuals, especially night visuals of the Indian missions and important buildings in those countries. In fact, it has been now an annual affair when it comes to Burj Khalifa being decked up in the Indian tricolor. So these kind of celebrations you will see, but also a larger reflection as to what India can achieve and has achieved so far in its of course 75 years since independence.
Right, absolutely, Sidhant. We have seen India become such a dominant player in the international community. We can expect some announcements on that regard in the speech as well. What about the preparations and the security cover there?
Well, in terms of the preparations, we have seen how since morning security has been beefed up, and over the last few days, especially over the weekend, we have seen how the focus has been to especially make sure that the Har Ghar Tiranga initiative, the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, can spread awareness, but also essentially involve the common man on the ground in terms of the Independence Day celebration. But largely, we know that people from all walks of life have come together for celebration. We will see those visuals as the day progresses. It's just 7 a.m. here in Delhi. So now the big focus right now is what the Indian Prime Minister is going to say from the ramparts of the Red Fort, because as we have been talking about, that this essentially has over the time become an important platform where the Indian Prime Minister talks about various policy decisions the Indian government is going to take forward, whether it's health, whether it's startup program. And today the initiatives which will be announced by the Indian Prime Minister, which is given that's the only thing that we can safely say is going to happen, is going to make sure that the various areas India is focusing on, the Indian government is focusing on, can be taken forward in terms of health, because that has been a number one priority of the Indian government in the backdrop of the COVID crisis.
Right, absolutely. Also, in a first and indigenously developed howitzer gun will be also part of the 21 gun salute during the ceremony at Red Fort. What can you tell us about that?
Well, of course, to showcase India's Atmanirbhar Bharat project, we know that this time the gun which will be used, one gun that will be used, will be made by the DRDO. So that's more symbolic in terms of the role played by the Defence Ministry, and of course how the Indian government is focusing on Atmanirbhar Bharat project. While rest of the guns remain British, largely it is more symbolic, but largely the initiative and the priority of the Indian government is Make in India, whether it's defense or any other project or initiative. So largely we will see more such programs by the Indian government. We know that especially if we talk about defense, how the Indian government has been inviting foreign companies to come here, make in India. That creates employment, but also making sure that India becomes a hub of defense exports. For example, the Philippines deal, the BrahMos deal is something which is much talked about, but recently in the Indian Parliament we saw how the Indian government basically talked about the countries that have shown interest in Indian defense equipments, whether it's Malaysia, Egypt. In fact, US and UK have also shown interest in certain Indian defense equipment, and that saves foreign exchange as well for the Indian government. So largely that is something that is again a long-term plan of the Indian government.
Right, Sidhant. Also, as India celebrates 75 years of independence, let's also just talk about how India has become such an important player in the global community.
We have seen in last few years how India's stature has increased, and that is progressively growing as well, given that how India has been able to make sure that its policy is something that is welcomed. Over the weekend, we saw that clip which went viral of the former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan lauding India, the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar for his policy, for the Indian government's policy, in fact, when it comes to importing oil from Russia despite the sanctions. So largely, whether it's West, whether it's East, India has been part of various initiatives. India is part of SCO, BRICS, India is part of Quad as well. ITU2 is the latest initiative in which India has become part of. So largely this shows that whether it's Beijing, whether it's Moscow, whether it's Washington, they want to woo India. In fact, the Chinese envoy here in Delhi did a very rare briefing last week and talked about how they are very keen that India openly reiterates the One China policy. Of course, it doesn't look that it's going to happen very soon, given that the Indian External Affairs Minister and the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs both have skipped the mention of One China. But it shows that Beijing is also keen to have India when it comes to a high-level engagement, even though the borders issue continues and New Delhi remains miffed with China. So there are a lot of changes happening geopolitically, we have seen, but that hasn't stopped India to reach out to countries and also countries to reach out to India. So today India's voice matters, whether it's foreign policy or whether it's a climate change initiative.
Right, absolutely, Sidhant. And as India celebrates 75 years of independence, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the nation from the Red Fort. And ahead of his speech, Prime Minister Modi visited Rajghat to pay his respects as well. We're getting these live visuals right now. Prime Minister Modi expected to address the nation in a short while from now. Also in a first, an indigenously developed howitzer gun will be part of the 21-gun salute during the Independence Day ceremony at the Red Fort. And ahead of the celebrations, as we mentioned, multi-layered security cover along with facial recognition system cameras have been installed at the entry and exit points at the Red Fort. We can see these visuals coming in right now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi there. Now, on the eve of India's Independence Day, President Draupadi Murmu addressed the nation and said that we Indians proved skeptics wrong. Democracy not only grew roots in this soil, it was enriched as well. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.